Matt, welcome to the podcast. Tell our audience a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do.
Yeah. Firstly, I just want to say thank you for inviting me on your podcast. I'm 22 years old. I'm based in Sydney, and I'm a mental fitness facilitator. So what that means is I run workshops in high schools, in corporates, and I even work with people one-on-one so that they can bounce back when times get tough. And I've been doing this now for 4 years, and it's my absolute passion. It's what got me out of my hole. And yeah.
Well, from 18 years old, man, that's a big deal. So you're 22 years old, and you've been doing this for around 4 years. So from the time you were 18.
Yeah. Like I'll get more into it, I suppose, earlier on where I started sharing my story, but that's not really workshops. I evolved it to become more of a workshop where people can actually, step inside within themselves and then rise as a result. And that is where I would then say the mental fitness facilitating started. Before then, I was just sharing my story.
What does a mental fitness facilitator do?
Yes, yeah. I mean, it's not common. So to start off, mental fitness. Now, we have physical fitness, and we so often talk about our physical health because it's really important. How about our mental health? How about our mental fitness? Why don't we approach it in the same manner? How can we keep mentally fit? Just like we'll exercise, we eat healthy to keep physically fit, drink enough water, get enough sleep. What about things that we can do, mentally speaking, to make sure that we are mentally fit, that we stay resilient, we, increase our mental strength, understand and overcome our fears? Just that ability to bounce back is really how I sum it all up, because that's what it really is.
Yeah, and there's a one-to-one parallel between mental and physical fitness, regardless of how you look at it. When you become more physically fit, you tend to feel better emotionally, mentally, from a mental health point of view, and vice versa. In fact, there's been some great cutting-edge research around people who have schizophrenia, and they are put on a fitness regimen, and what they find is that symptoms of schizophrenia tend to reduce significantly just from initiating that physical regimen without anything else, without changing anything else. You're just adding an extra variable in there. So I think the type of work that you're describing to me definitely has high precedence when it comes to moving forward in life.
Yeah, and I think and you've said it better than I could.
Well,
physical fitness, mental fitness, they coincide so much.
They do. And that's why psychologists have terms like psychosocial or biopsychosocial interventions, where they talk about the biological elements of what's going on, what's happening in the body, the psychological determinants, and the social elements as well, which I guess from a social point of view, it's a very going into, and if you're playing on a team or if you're doing something, having other people on board, that's part of what sport's all about. And I know just over the weekend, you did a bit of, you did some tryouts. Do you want to tell our audience a bit about the tryouts before we jump into your own story?
Sure. I tried out for a New South Wales state basketball team, and the thing was, right, so I only picked up the basketball again, 2 months ago, give or take. I at the end of lockdown, I was like, man, what's the one area in my life where I've been so disciplined, structured, and rigid with? That's my fitness. And before my injury, I was all about basketball. I played it and I loved it. Why don't I still do that? Why can't I do that? There's nothing stopping me but me. So I bought a basketball and I just went out to my local courts and just shot hoops like over and over and over again. I love it. And I went to Wheelchair Sports. I approached them. I'm like, look, get me in a team. Like, I'm just so keen. And they said, look, there's no comps going on at the moment because of the COVID situation, but they do have a state trials coming up. They said it might be tough. I was like, get me on board. And that was the first time I actually played with people in chairs. And
Yeah.
damn, yeah, took home some presents as well on my hands.
Yeah, you really blistered them up, didn't you? And our audience who might not be aware of your story, you mentioned an injury, you mentioned that you're currently in a wheelchair, and you're also a mental fitness passionate into mental fitness, and you're facilitating all that sort of stuff. Where does the story begin with you, Matt? What if you were to look back into your own story, what's led you to where you are right now? Where would you say your story starts, and how have you progressed into who you are right now?
It's, like the beginning of my life, there's not a whole lot to it. I'm very privileged in a way. I'm very blessed because I had a great upbringing. Really did. I had, it was just like a typical Sydney kid growing up, middle class. Never had any struggles, did well at school, did well in my sports. It was a very outgoing kid, never had troubles with any of that. When I was 12, my relationship with my parents really started to deteriorate, and that's nothing on them. How do I say it? That's when things started to shift, because now I didn't feel much connection in my life. Now, don't get me wrong, things are still the same. I just don't feel close to my parents. Now, though, I'm seeking connection through other means. And growing up, and I was brought up like religious, and nothing against religion whatsoever. Though I remember at mass one day, I heard the priest say, "Oh, you'll find your purpose through God and through the Bible," and that didn't sit well with me. And I would hear people say, everyone has a meaning in their life. Yeah. Everything happens for a reason. And when I heard the priest say that, I sort of questioned it. I was like, well, what's the meaning of my life? Why am I here? So sort of trying to seek connection within myself that I felt like I, didn't really have. And, it's a hard question to answer, but especially when you're 12. But
oh, definitely. It's harder questions to answer as you grow older. So, coming at it from at the inception of adolescence, from 12 years old, dealing with these existential questions about who am I, what am I doing here, what's my purpose? And then you have someone telling you, well, your purpose is to be found within a particular framework of belief, and you're trying to grapple with that as well. It makes perfect sense that you'd find it pretty difficult to wrap your head around as a 12-year-old.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even try to grapple what he said. I just sort of just brushed it off, because I was like, that's bullshit. Like, that's what I thought to myself. You don't mind me swearing, by the way, do you?
No, go ahead, man.
And so, I mean, me being a curious kid, like, I always ask questions and I was like, all right, well, okay, if I was dead, would anything actually change? Like, if I wasn't here, would anything be different around here? And again, hard to answer when you're alive. But then I asked myself, okay, well, do I actually add any value to others? If purpose is about contributing, do I actually play a role in society? And I had my answer then. Being 12 years old, I had no job. Just, felt like I was taking up space because I lived at home with my parents and didn't really contribute. And so that meant, well, if I was gone and dead, nothing would actually be different or change. There'd be more space for someone else who had more meaning and purpose in their life. And ultimately, that means my life's meant nothing. My life means nothing, and that I'm worthless. And those questions, they were daunting, and they're so heavy, and I just tried changing the answer to those questions as well, but I didn't feel I could. I felt like that was the only truth that was there, and I accepted that as fact. And
12 years of age, what kind of what kind of mindset were you adopting at the time when you were questioning all this sort of stuff? I mean, ordinarily people who are 12 and over, they go through it. There's a lot of changes coming into the adolescence period, one of which people start to question who they are, what they're doing, where their purpose lies. And one neuroscientist calls this the creative exploration phase, where we try to explore these different questions and purposes within our life. It sounds like your point of view. How was your grappling with these issues any different to other 12-year-olds your age? Did you somehow feel like you were different to other 12-year-olds at the time, or did you, like, what's going on there?
So no one in my life would speak about when they were upset. They wouldn't speak about their emotions. They would always, keep quiet, and no one would address them. No one would approach them, ask, hey, is everything all right? Like, what's going on? Like, you don't seem your normal self. No one addressed it. And so I didn't address it. But with these thoughts in my head and this new belief now that I'm adopting, I looked at everyone else, especially at school, and they were all smiling, but I didn't feel that inside. That really killed me. But I can't say anything. At least I thought I couldn't. It was just, something I felt like I had to keep to myself.
What did you feel you had going for you you're going into, it was either grade 6 or year 7 at the time, going into high school?
Middle of year 7, yeah.
Middle of year 7. Okay. So did you go to a school that was with people that you knew, or was it a different school?
At this stage, so this is halfway through the year, when I'm starting to have these thoughts, I'm decently popular. Like, not to toot my own horn, but I had friends, and I had friends from my primary school that came to the school. Not heaps, but some. But yeah, even then, I wasn't really hanging around those guys. I was hanging around new friends that I'd made, and I just fell into that belief.
Did you have anyone else that you had spoken about what was going on for you at the time? Not even at school, not even a girlfriend or someone else. It was just something you kept to yourself.
Not at the time. At the time, I kept it all to myself because I really felt like I couldn't speak to anyone. Though, later on, I eventually started saying a little bit to some people. And so at the end of that year, I started actually getting into drugs. And that, it wasn't like something I was actually looking for either. It sort of just came to me. I was, hanging out with a friend that wasn't from school. He lives near my grandparents, actually. And I slept over his place one night, and I didn't see it coming, but he offered me to smoke some pot.
Yeah.
And, my belief system at the time was, drugs are bad. That's all I heard from school. And so that's what I believed. Though, I ended up smoking that night because, he's like, Matt, it'll mellow you out and make you feel good. And so at the back of my mind, I'm thinking, shit, well, that's the answer to my problems that I've had now for these last 6 months or so. And so I realized though when I was high, I was numb. There was no thought of, am I good enough? I'm worthless. Why the hell am I still here? And all this stuff. I wasn't thinking that. And the next morning, I was just comparing myself to the night before, how I'd felt so quote unquote free, even though I wasn't. I thought it was, and just how I wanted more of that. And so one thing that I had in my mind though was I wasn't going to share the drugs with anyone at my school. No one was going to know that I firstly smoked pot, but also wanted to, continue on with drugs. There was one girl in my grade who had smoked pot once and slept with a guy from another school, and the whole grade, shunned her. It was horrible. She ended up leaving that year. And like basically no one from school like ever like really spoke to her moving forward. It was so bad.
Yeah, so you've got that negative reinforcement there, that if I bring this forward and people know that I'm smoking, then this is what's happened to this person. What the hell is going to happen to me? Does that sound similar to? Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what's going on in my mind. And my family, I mean, my dad always told me, if you ever touch drugs, I'll kill you. You're kicked out of the house, all that stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
And like I understand like why he said that and everything. But yeah, I didn't want to obviously approach family about it. So I kept it all to myself. Though when I came home, it was just so heavy on my mind. You know, I want to get more. I want to get more. And you know, I was a skater. I loved riding my board, and I was usually like at the time I would be gone for like a few hours. My parents wouldn't say anything because they just knew I was going for a skate. And I thought to myself, shit, I have an opportunity there to, you know, see if I can get, you know, find someone else, get on and, you know, get high again. And so I used that as an opportunity. I even ventured pretty far outside of my house and came across someone. And you know, he ended up actually introducing me to coke, and so I initially was resistant, didn't want to do it, but you know, he's like, "What? Your first line's not going to kill you. Yeah, I'll do it with you." And I'm like, okay, it mustn't be that bad if he's going to do it as well. And yeah, I found a new love for that more so than the pot. And when I went back to him asking for more, yeah, he said it's not for free. And so being 13 at the time, I have no job, no income. So one way to make money at that time. And so I started selling for him. And yeah, that was a interesting world in itself as well.
Well, let's do you mind if we just look at that for a second? Because weed has a different effect on the body, a hugely different effect on the body than coke does. And you're already feeling down and out. You have a low view of yourself. You said earlier on that you were feeling worthless. You had no one to talk with. You were contemplating all this sort of stuff. And what weed did is it got you almost like a dissociative feeling, like you were disconnected, you were out, you were numb, and you just didn't have to deal with that anymore. And then coke comes in, and what coke does really well is it boosts your ego. You think you can do anything, you know, you're just boom right there. It's a diametrically opposed to any type of weed or other type of downers. So coke does that for you. It's an ego fuel. And so here you've got what you're dealing with from an existential point of view. I'm shit, I'm worthless, I'm bad, you know, all this sort of stuff. And then coke's like, nah, man, you're the bomb. You can do whatever you want. And you're like, oh, I want that. All right, so how do I move forward to get that? I'm going to do anything it takes to get my hands on that sort of stuff again. And here you are selling for this guy.
And it just seemed like a no-brainer, right? Like, okay,
why not?
I'm seriously upset with myself. Yet I have a fix. I can get the fix, but I need to, you know, work for it. It just seemed like a no-brainer. And so, and man, you talk about, you know, coke being an ego boost. Man, me and that and skating, I used to fly. Anyways, I didn't get into that. But yeah, so you know, started selling all that stuff. And anyways, 4 months into the whole drugs and all that jazz, I met a girl at school who became my girlfriend. And this was something different because, you know, being a dealer, I mean, how I made my money most of the time was through, you know, parties and stuff. Like the guy who I was working for, he would just bring me to parties and I would, you know, sell there. And yeah, it just became easy. And the girls I'd meet there, you know, yeah, it wasn't, how I say it, like meaningful. But then I met this girl in my high school, is obviously in my grade, same age, and you know, we became boyfriend and girlfriend. It really felt like something special, and I didn't want to tell her about anything. Like, still I've had the same beliefs, right? I don't want to open up about, how I'm feeling. If I told her about the drugs, surely she'd leave me. She was the most innocent girl, I swear. And, 4 months later, we both ended up at a party. And, this was the first time that I'd smoked weed with some of my mates at school. Some of them had just gotten into it. And, I'd heard about it. So I was like, all right, well, let's go smoke up. And, she knew I was high, and she messaged me the next day. She said, yeah, Matt, why were you smoking pot? Then I met up with her at school, and I just told everything to her. I was like, Viv, that was her name. Like, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I was high, but it's not just the weed that night. I've been, doing coke now for 8 months or so, and I've been dealing to keep it up. I haven't been doing it for no reason. I mean, I've been upset. I haven't told anyone either. You're the first person I'm telling. And look, I've had thoughts of ending my own life. Like, I don't really want to be here anymore. I don't know why I'm still here, but hey, look, this makes me feel like someone. And she, basically didn't she basically didn't even know who she was looking at, and she gave me an ultimatum. And fair enough. I mean, she's like, Matt, take me or take the drugs. Like, there's no in between. I can't have it in my life. It's toxic. And to her face, I said, look, I'll leave the drugs. Don't worry. I want to stay with you. I mean, she did really mean something to me. And it's funny because someone can mean something to you, but then you have something in your life like coke or whatever drug or whatever vice you have, and you'll make any excuse in the world why they're wrong and why you still need that vice. Because it's in my head after that. I was just fuming. I was so angry. Who is she? How dare she? All that stuff, right? I mean, just thinking,
at the time someone's giving you an ultimatum of you either choose me or you choose the drugs, but the drugs is another person to you. It almost feels like this is
basically
it's a relationship that I'm engaged in, and this relationship is giving me such a boost. This relationship is giving me something that I can't get when I'm sober. And so it's like you're presented with the two people. It's like, choose me or choose her, and then you choose the person that is real, who in this case was Viv, was your girlfriend at the time. But then it's like, well, I begin to resent the person that I've chosen, because now they've gotten me to say no to this. I mean, love in itself is exclusive. It says yes to one at the expense of all others, and that's the important bit that you're trying to negotiate. And you're 14 at the time, 13, 14?
About to turn 14, almost. But it was 13 still.
Well, presented with this as a 13-year-old, it's a big deal. And you're raging through, trying to make sense, and the emotional experiences at that age are supercharged compared to when the brain tends to mature up in the mid to late 20s. And that's the interesting bit, that your body is still trying to negotiate what's going on and connect with that. But continue on. What happened then?
And in my headspace of who does she think she is and all that stuff, it's funny, that afternoon I got a message from her, and she just said, she just said, hey Matt, how are you going? And it's funny, because I created all these stories in my mind, but why wasn't she angry as well? She just wanted to know how my day was or whatever. She wasn't holding any resistance. She believed me that I was going to leave it. And I mean, as much as, the coke was the person that I felt like I needed, I couldn't get that out of my head. And I took a step back and I was like, maybe she's actually right. Maybe I should actually, give it up. And I didn't want to give it up right away. Went to my supplier, paid him off. I still kept some coke for myself though, and took me 3 months after that to actually stop it for good. And didn't tell her. I kept it all to myself. I told her afterwards, but I now felt like I had my, what do you call it, answer gone, like my fix gone. But the universe, I think, it's always there. You're always protected. At the time, I just had my last bump. Funny enough, I was asked to DJ a friend's sister's 16th because DJing was like a little bit of a hobby that I had, but now I was asked to do it at a party. I never got that before, and so here I am DJing at this party, and these are people 2 years older than me. They're all 16 years old, and they're all shaking my hand, and they're dancing to the music, and they're having a great time. I felt so much, connection there. I felt like someone at those parties. I started playing the guitar as well, and I even started the gym. Gym was an interesting one, and I'd like to talk about this for a little bit because, I'm all about keeping yourself physically fit. Clearly, I still go to the gym to this day, though, considering I just got off, the coke and everything, and 4 or 5 months later, I started the gym. I was extremely skinny. Extremely skinny. My family are begging me to eat because I was really bad, and I hated my body. I was so insecure, and after I started the gym, like a few weeks later, I was getting changed at school because we were going to go play sport, and in the change rooms was the grade 2 years above me. Some of those guys were at that party that I DJ'd. And they're like, shit, look at Matt. He's bulked up. He's beefed up. He's got some muscle on him and all that stuff. And that, in that moment, just not only ego was boosted, but holy shit, I got so much connection from my body, from how I looked. In those moments, I didn't feel insecure because now everyone else in my class was starting to say the same thing because they were in the change rooms as well. I'm like, shit. And so I became obsessed with the gym. I would train religiously 5 days a week. And at the time, I worked it up to 6 and come to the point where I was it was year 9 camp. Yeah. I was there and we're at the beach. And as I went into the water, 5 minutes later, my mate comes to me. He's like, "Well, Matt, those teachers, sir was talking shit." I'm like, "What are you talking about? And why would they talk shit about me?" They're like, "Oh, no, look at Matt. He's on steroids and whatnot." And I'm like, "Are you serious?" They're like, "Yeah." And then they started questioning me. "Matt, are you on gear? Are you on steroids?" And I would brush it off. I'd be like, "Oh, yeah, sure. Oh, yeah, maybe." And I would never give a blunt answer because I got into the gym because I was insecure, right? People were feeding my insecurities. The fact that people thought I was on steroids at 15 years old, there's nothing that felt better at the time. And I'm not saying it's a good thing. It came from insecurity, but I kept that ball rolling to the point where, come those Christmas holidays, I was like, I want to come back to school in term 1 and no one's going to recognize who I am. I want to blow up. And, I did. People kept asking the same question. I bulked up for 8 months, eating 6,500, 7,000 calories a day. I was taken to the extreme. And I'd really put on a lot of weight. And then I dieted for 4 months, dropped 20 kilos, and all for one photo. I had this idea in my mind. I really wanted to, prove to the world that I'm somebody. I wanted my Facebook profile photo to be me topless. I knew the exact pose I was going to do. And yeah, I posted that photo, and everything I had planned came out. I had a goal, I achieved it, and not all the likes, the comments, people friend requesting me that didn't know, and even girls inboxing me, that was all coming through. But it's amazing. I projected this image to the world that I was someone, I was confident, I was hard, no one's going to mess with me, I get a lot of girls, yada, 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 yada. Even though I had a girlfriend, anyways, the whole time this is happening, right? That buzz doesn't last. Just like you know, hit of the bong, just like a bump, that dies. And people aren't obsessed with your body as much as you are. At least I was at the time. And, you know, I got all this attention, but that died. And so I worked so hard for this body for 18 months. I looked this way. No one else looked like me, but I didn't get the attention wasn't still coming. The validation wasn't there anymore. I was like, what the hell? That photo honestly boosted my insecurities. And this whole time, how I'm feeling hasn't changed.
Yep.
I'm chasing connections the entire time. I'm still feeling worthless. I'm still considering suicide this entire time. It's all coming from pain. From the outside, it looks perfect, but inside's a whole different story. That a freaking week after I posted that photo was January 9th, 2016. And that was a day that, you know, changed my life forever. I, you know, woke up that day not really wanting to do much. I'm an early riser, you know, 5:30, I wake up, make my brekkie, but nah, that morning I was up a lot later. And, you know, mum's questioning me. She's like, Matt, what are you doing? You're up so late. Like, at the time I was training with her too. And she's like, you're going to come gym with me? Like, what are we training? I was like, Mum, forget about it. And she noticed something's up. She's like, what do you mean, Matt? You've been training 6 days a week since you've started. You haven't missed a day. What, you're gonna miss a Saturday? You said you have nothing on. I'm like, what's up?
Yep.
I'm like, Mum, I'm tired. Leave it. She didn't want to hear it. And I didn't do much that day. Just basically stayed in my room, played my guitar, like the whole day basically. And come that night, just, you know, everyone's lights are upstairs are off, so I flick mine off. And I just go in my bed just listening to music quietly. Just, God, those same questions, you know, what's the meaning of my life? My valuable parts to society. If I was gone and dead, would anything change? Like they haven't left my mind. And they're at a point now where I can't even just I literally can't bring to words like how like heavy they were. And, you know, that label of being worthless, if that's the truth, why the fuck am I still here? And why don't I just freaking own this? What the hell am I still doing? And like, there was just so much pain in that moment. I went to my phone and I just scrolled through my contacts. Like, was there anyone that, you know, might care if I was gone? And only person that I sent a message to was Viv. And yeah, I thought she'd be the only one that might care the slightest bit because I really loved her. And, you know, it's funny when you know the end's coming, you don't hold back. You sort of just let it all out. And I was just writing this massive message without even, like, I basically didn't even backspace. I just kept typing and typing and typing all that I wanted to share with her, you know, like deep down, I actually really did want to, you know, get the pain off me. I wanted to, you know, share how much I really loved her, what she meant to me. I said some of the sweetest things I've probably ever said in that message. And I, you know, left my phone on the bed after I'd sent it. I snuck out of my house and, you know, went to my local shopping center. And yeah, it's a 15-minute walk to get to this place, but there was no hesitation. I tell you, I was just so fixated on this idea of like, I have to be gone. Not only do I have to be gone, like just me still being around is so detrimental to society. Yeah, I got on the roof. I knew exactly where I was going to jump, the highest point that was going to land on concrete, and I freaking didn't. There was no hesitation. I ran, slammed my hands, and I threw myself off. And that's how I got my injury. My injury is a spinal cord injury. And even I suffered many, many, many more things with that, but that was the main one. And yeah.
Wow.
That turned my life around.
That's intense, man. What
And it's
do
sorry.
do you have clear memories of that point, that throwing yourself off, traveling through the air, landing, waking? Like what is that something that you'd like to share?
For sure. I mean, in terms of my memory, it's like little in terms of when I jumped. I remember a split second in the air, but actually, I suppose falling and like hitting the ground. Nah, I was knocked out, and yeah, like so. I remember like just throwing my hands like just on that railing, just because like one thing I didn't share is that I had actually planned this for a long time. I knew exactly how I was going to do it, where I was going to do it, the time of day. I just didn't know when. And I had this like movie in my mind, it's like visual that I played out for over a year constantly. I didn't want to, like it just made so much sense to me. And like, I knew exactly what I was going to do. And it was exactly how I planned it. It's like I read a freaking script. And when I jumped, the only thought I remember was finally.
Mm.
And that was it. And yeah, I mean, I woke up 2 weeks later in a hospital bed just thinking like, what the fuck's going on? And, realizing they've got casts on both arms. I got a neck brace on. I got boots on both legs. My arms held up by slings, tubes going through me, all this stuff. And all I want to ask is, what the hell happened? Like, and I couldn't really even express myself. No one could hear the words I was saying. And quickly it came back while I was in hospital. Like, I remembered I did my absolute best to hide my depression, but I did absolutely no work in hiding the fact that it was an attempt. The people that were close to me, they all knew what it was. Obviously, I had sent that message to Viv as well. And yeah, I mean, what's a kid doing on a freaking, like laying on a concrete car park at being found at 5:30 in the morning or whatever? Like, there's no other reason. And so
what time was it that you went to the shopping center? Do you remember the time?
Yeah, it's like 11 o'clock at night.
And so from there to 5 a.m., you would have been there for about 6 hours.
Yeah.
Wow.
I was some local tradies had found me. They were doing some construction at the time. And yeah, they called the cops. And I mean, I didn't have any ID or anything on me. I didn't even have my phone. It was just me. And my dad woke up and he realized that the door to the garage was open. He's like, that's strange. He goes downstairs and I was sleeping in the room right next to it. But that room, like, they had glass on the door so you could see through it. And he realized I wasn't there. And he realized I wasn't awake as well. So he's like searching the house. And Viv had sent a message to my sister at around like, I don't know what time, but she sent a message to my sister and saying, I think Matt's attempted suicide. And so my whole family like searched the house left, right, center. And then they eventually lost hope and called the cops. And they, find me on the ground. And so they rushed me to the hospital. And yeah, I was in a coma for 2 weeks. The thing was, when it came back to me, what I'd done, there's only one thing going through my mind, because mentally and emotionally, I'm not in any different of a place. Okay, I'm heavily drugged up while I'm in hospital, all these medications, but I'm in the same place. And the only thing that's different is my physical, physical situation. Because the spinal cord injury, what it does, like wherever you get injured, below that, it's basically paralyzed. And there are two types of injuries, incomplete and complete. And to sum it up, I got a complete injury where my spinal cord was severed into two. There should be no nerves going through that level. So all sensation or function lost. And I'm just thinking to myself, if I was worthless beforehand, how fucking pathetic am I now? Just why am I still here? Yeah. And one thing I was very blessed with is I had a lot of support. I didn't take note of it at the time because I still have the same beliefs. I still believe no one cares about me. I still believe I'm worthless. And, a month later, I'm into the spinal ward upstairs and I'm a baby. I'm 16. And everyone up there is asking the exact same question. Matt, you're so young. What are you doing in hospital for? Why do you have a spinal cord injury? Yada, yada, yada. All wanting to know what happened. People that came to visit me, some of them didn't know, and some of them asked, and even complete strangers. Like, why are you in the wheelchair? What happened to you? And I always, said the same thing. So I was so ashamed. I had an accident. If they kept asking, I would say, look, I had a fall. Yeah, and just unfortunate. I wouldn't say any more than that. I was so embarrassed, and yeah,
just exacerbate. It's almost like every time somebody asks, and even perhaps recount, depending on where you are right now, even just any time somebody asks what had happened, it just brings up that initial shame, the initial feeling that a lot of people have who survive attempts at suicide. Is like, I can't even get this right, and that just makes it even worse until they take that step to question, what does this mean for me and how can I move forward? And I'd love to get into that soon, but before I do that, you mentioned that you'd poured your heart out to Viv in the message, and then you left the phone at home. So even if she were to call or to message back, you wouldn't even know. And so the last person who you thought would possibly care at the time, you wouldn't have even known whether she had or hadn't, because you were so fixated on that choice. When you were trying to make sense of this afterwards, because you're still at the same place and you've got all these physical injuries, how long did it take you to try to make sense of, what does this mean for me right now? And how do I move forward from there?
It took a while. And I mean, I was like, one thing I'm blessed with also, that I'm freaking stubborn. And I like to call it passionate, but some people say it differently. I was so fixated on like, I'm going to walk again. I'm going to walk again. I'm going to walk again. And I refused to believe anything different. And I was doing what I could to sort of hopefully get there. And at the time in hospital, nothing came back. I was, still didn't want to talk. I was still the same person. And seeing psychologists twice a day, freaking killed me. I hated it at the time. And I just didn't like talking. Though, 4 months or so into my hospital stay, I was out with my mum, and we went to Penrith. So it's about an hour and a half from the hospital to Penrith. And I went and got some piercings. And when I got those piercings, I was like, I was genuinely happy. Like, I'm sure you know what it's like when you get a tattoo. There's that feeling of like, look at me, like, check this out. Like,
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with the piercings. And it gave me a little bit of a buzz. And on the train ride back to the hospital, this complete stranger comes on. I never met him. He's a real bogan sort of personality, no filter. Before he even sits down, he just looks at me. He's like, fucking hell, what did you do to yourself? And I swear it was like this voice that spoke for me. I didn't even mean for it to come out. But looking back on it, it must have been a mixture of, how, happy I felt with those piercings, but also how blunt and abrupt he was. I just, without thinking, I said I attempted suicide. He just laughs at me and says, that was pretty fucking stupid, wasn't it? And then he takes his seat. And Jesus, I mean, he just had no filter. And, I mean, there's a pretty awkward conversation from there because I didn't know how to, talk to this guy. He wanted to know more and more and more, ask all these questions.
Oh, God. Yep.
But the next morning I woke up with this lightness that I could it puzzled me. I was like, what's going on? And this is the first time I went and saw my social worker without her having to chase me up. I mean, every time we had a session, I didn't really want to go, but I just went and saw her. But I didn't even have a session, and shut off the piercings, and I shared what happened with that guy on the train and how I felt that morning. And she's like, Matt, I don't know, maybe there was something there in that. I'm like, what are you talking about? And she's like, Matt, you've been lying to people now for 4 months, and you finally told the truth to someone. But not only did you tell the truth, you woke up feeling lighter. I don't know, Matt. Is that a sign? And I really did want to hear that. But then she asked the question, Matt, what if you could open up to the people close to you in life? Could you potentially strengthen the relationship you already have with them? And those words I'll never forget because they really challenged me. And after I heard that, I just cut the conversation. I went out. I was like piss off. I don't like talking. But she made a good point. That guy on the train, I didn't mean to say that. I woke up feeling lighter. And Viv came to visit me that afternoon, and when she asked, how are you? I was real with her. What my social worker said stuck with me, and I was authentic with Viv. And every time I share this, it honestly blows me away because just my mindset at the time was so different to everything that happened. Here I am 4 months after I looked in the best shape that I ever looked. I was ripped. I was huge. But now I'm scrawny. I'm skinny. I'm in a wheelchair. Half my body doesn't function. I can't feel it. And she's saying to me, Matt, I've never felt closer to you and I've never loved you more. Thank you for sharing. I actually feel like I'm talking to you. And that really hit me. And, I went to bed that night and I was still in tears about that whole conversation, because that was the one thing I didn't do before my injury. Did I go through this whole fucking thing just to learn that one lesson? And sure enough, 8 months later, I was at the end of year, and the same social worker, she'd asked me to come back to the hospital. I'm home at this stage, and she asked Matt, hey, would you be open to sharing your story to about, 30 or so young people that come to the hospital for a program? Initially, I was like, look, I don't know. I don't really, I don't like talking, it's not my thing. But she's like, Matt, remember that guy on the train, what that did for you? Hell, what if opening up to others could, help you further and help other people? And it was again, this voice that spoke for me. I didn't even mean to say it. I just said yes. But this, that feeling in my heart and that thought that said, hey, Matt, if you could help someone, how would that feel? I just, and I just rolled with it. There was a good, 3-4 month gap until I first started shared my story publicly. And I was scared. I was nervous, man. And, it was these 30 young people, same age as me. And I'm just like, what are they all thinking of me? Afterwards, I was basically shaking and just constantly thinking the same stuff. And they came to me though. As I'm there, just avoiding all eye contact, they came up to me and said, hey, Matt, I just want to say thank you. They shook my hand. They, they said it inspired them. And some said that they wanted to help their friends after and make sure that they're okay after hearing me speak. And, I held it back while I was there in the room, but just this thought was just so heavy in my mind. I couldn't get that moment out of my head because for so long now, for 5 years, I've been thinking and believing that I was worthless and that, everyone would be better off if I wasn't here. But here I am having inspired someone. Like, I was just in tears, man. And yeah, I got asked to speak at that school that came those 30 kids, like their school. Like, I was asked to speak at a parents' evening, from going from 30 people in a little classroom to 300 people in the hall. I mean, I was scared, but the same thing happened. I even had people asking for advice this time around, like how they can support their friends, but also support themselves. And man, this was, yeah.
It's a huge, it just moved, it consolidated that you're worthwhile. You have something worthy to share and to help others with. And that was something that you were struggling with for a huge chunk of your life. Am I worthless? Am I worthwhile? What do I have to offer? And now suddenly you're presented with evidence that just by you being you, that is what people are holding on to. Whereas at the time, you didn't feel like bearing yourself, being truly vulnerable and people seeing you for what you are, that for you at the time was incongenible. You could not make sense of why anybody would like you. And now here are these people saying, man, here's his most vulnerable side and we really like it. That's true self-esteem. What happened next?
Yeah. I was so my parents took me to that gig in at Pittwater House. That was the school. And on the way back, my dad asked me, Matt, do you see yourself taking this somewhere? And I paused. I didn't know how to answer that initially, though. One thing I'd realized in that moment was that I'd become the person that I needed when I was younger. Those people that were coming up to me and asking, hey, Matt, how can I do X, Y, Z? My friend's going to do this and this. What can I do to this and this? And there's people coming up to me, sharing, asking for advice. That's what I needed when I was younger. But if I wasn't there that night, would they have approached someone? Who knows? Some said I was the first person that they spoke to. And the more I was sharing my story, the more I'd come across these young people. It's just at this program, right? Like young people saying the same thing to me. And then I was like, I want to take this a bit further. I want to start sharing my story in schools. And so I did. And I was like, no. Okay, sharing my story is one thing. I want to evolve it to be a bit more. I want there to be a workshop aspect to it as well. And so I started doing that. And I was then being approached by people in the corporate world. And I started going out to conferences, universities as well. And it started unfolding. And it got to a point where, I would truly say no matter how low that I was, I'm truly happy now. I'm fulfilled. I don't believe I'm anxious, depressed, or suicidal anymore. Look, I still get bad days. I still get upset. I'm still human. But the mindset's so different now. So different. And I truly believe, not only do I have purpose, everyone has purpose. Our purpose in life is to be us at our fullest, most authentic expression. And to be doing what I'm doing is a privilege. It really is. And if it wasn't for my journey, my story, I wouldn't be in the position that I am. So if you were to ask me, hey, Matt, would you change anything in your life? Would you not attempted suicide if you could go back? I tell you no. Where I am is the best version of Matt at 22 years old. I know that for a fact.
Wow.
Would I like to walk? Yeah, sure. I'd like to walk again. That'd be great. Though I promise you, I'm going to walk again every day. Like even just this morning as well. I'm doing sit to stands with my trainers. My spinal cord's severed, like I mentioned earlier. but it's at a point now. And like I've regained nerve function, strength, and some muscle activation, and it's genuinely working.
Wow.
I got on the bike in the gym today. Yeah, it's like I will walk again. I know for a fact.
God, that's a topic that in itself that we can jump on into, and I think it might be worthwhile to jump on into that a little bit. I want to track back a little bit and ask you, because many people listening will probably be like, well, so much bad stuff has happened to me, and I would wish things to change. If I could go back, I would change everything, and I still feel this way and that. Like, well, what coming from where you've come from, what was that thing that pushed it over the edge to say that you went from worthless and feeling like you weren't supposed to be here anymore to change your mindset around, because you use the word mindset, and it's probably, I suspect it wasn't just one thing, but I'm just wondering what some of the things that contributed to that?
I think it goes back to one of the first questions you asked me in this conversation, right? What did it all mean to you, and how did you come to that place of realizing that? Realizing that I wouldn't be in the position that I am now. And where I am is truly happy with what I'm doing. Being able to facilitate workshops in high schools, in corporates, yada, 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 to be able to work with people one-on-one, that's amazing. It really is. I've got countless testimonials from people that I've workshopped, and every single one of them, I just light my heart up. I wouldn't be in the position right now if it wasn't for my adversity, and there was so much to learn from
it. And would you say that you
lessons?
That's the thing I was going to ask you. You had to open yourself up to be able to really accept or even hear the positive reinforcement from other people. Was that hard for you at the beginning when people would say, yeah, you've done this and that for me? Like how long did it take for you to actually accept that you were good, you were a good person, or you were contributing positively in someone else's life? Did it take a while for you to sit with that?
The fact that it's someone else's truth, right? Like that I inspired them or whatever, right? That's not my answer. So who am I to say that they're wrong? And I can't, right? And so I didn't. And it did take a while for me to sort of accept that maybe I am someone of value. Maybe I can, I can contribute in a meaningful way. And yeah, look, while I say it's the best thing that ever happened to me and I'm grateful for it, by no means am I saying that suicide's great. I think it's the worst thing, and it breaks my heart every time I hear someone attempting or I see suicide statistics. It honestly really gets to me. And I wouldn't wish it upon my worst enemy. No one deserves it. But I needed to go through what I did to be in the position that I am, so I can pass on the lessons and insights to other people so they don't have to have the same experiences that I did.
I think that's a really good clarification that you make. It's not a matter of thinking taking one's own life is something that's not what you're talking about. It's about what came afterwards, that at least in the way that you're thinking couldn't have been arrived to unless you were able to go through what you had gone through. That's the distinguishing factor. It's we talked about this before we started recording, that Friedrich Nietzsche, the German philosopher who died in 1900, he was stricken with debilitating physical illness throughout his entire life, up until the day he died. From a young child, he would go through excruciating headaches and nausea and physical pain, so much so that the majority of the year he was under intense amount of pain, and he had to give up his university post because he couldn't teach because of the pain that he was going through. And he spent most of the year just going from one specialist to another specialist to another specialist, trying to figure out who can help him the most. He would have to sit in dark rooms for extended periods of time. He was pretty introverted and softly spoken. But the thing with him was that when he was asked what advice would you give somebody, or what do you think the greatest gift to give somebody would be, he said, I would wish suffering upon the person I love the most, because what they learn through that suffering is the thing that they benefit from in the utmost. And he came up with that saying, what doesn't kill me makes me stronger. And it's a really interesting one, because this wasn't just coming from an armchair philosopher who pontificates about themes of the universe. And his philosophy was completely practical. It was all about, what can you do in your action? What can you do rather than what can you say and what can you think about? What is it that you can do to help get to where you were? And he was one of those who has lived and gone through it. And he, after having gone through everything that he had gone through, just like I hear you say, after you've gone through everything, you would wish the learning that you were able to achieve and move that forward. Not necessarily the thing that happened, but the type of trial that you experienced. That's the thing that sticks with you the most. Please correct me if I'm misrepresenting your point.
No. You're on the mark. It's definitely what I'm about, because and while I run my workshops, I do add my story as that part of it, because the story is a catalyst to bring the lessons and open the conversation around it. And now we're, diving deep and all that stuff. And adversity can be your greatest gift if you allow it to be. There's so much we can learn as a result from adversity, though, it's also possible to fall into into a hole as a result. Everyone's life experience is different and relative. There's no right, no wrong, no better, no worse. There only is your experience, and what do you want to make out of it? And as a result, how could you help others? Because we all face adversity, but I believe our truest purpose on this life, yes, is to be our fullest, most authentic selves at our fullest expression. Though it's to be the person that we needed when times were rough for us. How can we give back into the world in that manner? And I believe I'm a representation of that. Many, many great people have done the exact same thing. And I think that's how you've contributed back in the most meaningful way, because those things that ailed you, you are now not only allowing to ail you, you're allowing to heal others.
To be the person that you needed at the time. If you're able to be that person for somebody else, that makes it all worthwhile.
Exactly, yeah.
That's huge, man.
That's yeah. Anyone that I meet who represents that, even if it's a young person, right? Like, I remember meeting someone who was, back in primary school, she used to get told she would never make it, she was never good enough. And she used to get bullied as well. She wants to be a primary school teacher to not change a system, but to be a hope and inspiration for other young people that are growing up to say that, hey, there's so much in you. And like even just like that little story there, I think it's massive. There's no better, no worse. It's all relative, right? It's whatever is meaningful to you.
You're able to use your experience to change that around, and that's, although you cannot control the circumstances, you can control what it is that you do with the hands that you've been dealt. And that's where it comes down to what you see is within your control. It's a tough gig. It's a real tough gig when we've been dealt a bad hand. But just like anybody who's played poker or has played, I play Monopoly with my children, and in the end, you all start off with the same amount of money. You all start off with the same pieces, and it's a throw of the dice that determines what happens moving forward. But it's not just that, because if you get someone who's good at playing Monopoly or poker or chess or what have you, even though you all start off with the same pieces, there's a certain way to play those pieces, play those cards to be able to come out on top. And what I hear you saying, Matt, is that, to use your words, adversity can be your greatest gift. That's you choosing how to play your hand. And as you choose that, I see a lot of hope in that. And hope for you is something that, at least in this conversation, has come out in spades. It's not easy. I mean, by no means can somebody say, I'm at the top of my game right now, or I'm still struggling with this or that. I mean, people say that all the time. It's not like I've been through this and now I am the best version of myself. You mentioned before that I am the best version of my 22-year-old self right now, even though I'm still learning. I'm still trying to do the best that I can do. Matt, is there anything that we haven't touched on right up until now that you'd like to bring up? Anything we haven't touched on that you think is important to share with our audience?
To anyone that's listening that may be maybe in a similar place, struggling, doing it rough, whatever that looks like for you, I want you to know there truly is a light at the end of the tunnel. And you might be lost in hearing bits of advice from all the different places and all this stuff. But I know after my injury, God, the amount of advice here, everyone wanted to be my savior. There's one voice you need to listen to. That's your heart. It's your most authentic voice, because your heart doesn't want to suppress your emotions. Your heart wants to experience them. Your heart also wants to express them. Your heart wants, to be you to be you. And I'll listen to it a little bit more. It makes life beautiful.
I appreciate your candidness there, your vulnerability, and your heart that you've brought up. That's as many would say, that's a true form of courage as you move forward. And Matt, if people wanted to find out a little bit more about yourself and just look you up and see what you're all about and how they can use your experience to help themselves and present to their own groups, where can they find you?
Yeah, my website is mattcaruana.com. That's mattcaruana.com. My Instagram is Matt Shares, and my Facebook and my LinkedIn are Matthew Caruana.
Okay, so Matt Shares, that's one word, Mattshhares.
Yep, Matt Shares, one word.
All right, awesome. And you also, I've heard you on radio as well. You do a bit of interviewing as well. You interviewed me, which is how we became acquainted in the beginning. Is that something that you do regularly?
I do, yeah. Every week, Wednesdays from 2 to 4, Business Insights with Mario and Matt. It's not actually a show about business. It's a show about spreading information, insights with stories that all inspire people, that add value to the listener, and especially now in a time where I feel we are probably most disconnected than ever, bringing about a light that people can feel that hole that they may be experiencing in their life.
And where can people tune into that?
That's on alive905.com.au. If you're in Sydney, if you're in the Hills, Parramatta or Hall Street, alive 90.5 FM.
All right. Matt, again, thank you so much. I appreciate you coming on the show and just being able to unburden yourself, if at all it was a burden in any way, but I really appreciate it, and I hope it speaks to many people. I know it will speak to many people who are listening today. So thank you for coming on board.
Thank you, Barry. I really appreciate you, Emil.